Hello, movie fans. Hey, God, movie fans, it's Pinky. Narf. Hi, movie fans, it's Carl Wheezer. I love watching movies with Mrs. Neutron. Dudes, dudettes, it's Raphael of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The only podcast we listen to in the sewer is Movies with Mitchell. Mitchell Davy, the fifth turtle. Cowabunga!
This is Rob Paulsen, veteran voice actor and the man behind some of the most iconic voiceover performances of the last 40 years. Even if you don't recognize his face, you've surely heard his voice at some point within your lifetime.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru.
Yes. Are you going to finish that croissant?
Max! Hey. Whoa! Small wilderness, dude! Hey, God, you astound me, right?
That's a simple task.
I wanted to discover more about Rob's work within the voice acting industry and also his personal reflections on his long and storied career, which is why I sat down to talk with him about everything relating to his work and career. All right, so my first question for you returns kind of like to your start in the world of voice acting. I'm curious to know like kind of how you got into the industry the moment you found out like, wow, people voice act for a living and I want to pursue this, and what kind of like ignited that passion we were just talking about.
Well, not unlike you, Mitch. May I call you Mitch or Mitchell? Which
Absolutely.
is
Mitch is perfect.
Just don't call you late for dinner. I know what you mean.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, like you, Mitch, I was bitten by the performance bug quite early. My background is music, then theater, and then I moved to LA after being on the road for a couple of years doing live theater. But I knew about voice acting. I knew about character acting in animation. Because when I was a kid, I was just transfixed by the usual stuff, Looney Tunes, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Flintstones, Johnny Quest. And what a lot of people your age don't know is that there were a number of shows that were animated primetime network shows. Now, of course, Fox has kind of a stranglehold on all that stuff. But, oh my goodness, there were, Johnny Quest was a Friday night ABC show, which I loved, action adventure. There was another show called Wait Till Your Father Gets Home that was a primary show, primetime show. Flintstones, same thing. In fact, Flintstones used to have built-in cigarette commercials to the Flintstones cartoon.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, you can find them on YouTube, and you'll see, they'll break for a commercial, and Fred will be smoking a Winston, and Barney will walk, "Hey Fred, what's your new cigarette?" "Barney, I've just found the best cigarette my doctor recommended, Winston." And doctors, they did used to use commercials. Most doctors choose Lucky Strike. Amazing. In this day and age, but I was around when that happened. So yeah, they would use, just like any other celebrity, to endorse a product, Fred Flintstone would endorse Winston cigarettes. Crazy. So I was very aware that in that the gentleman who voiced Fred was an actor named oh God, I'll think of it. And B. Benaderet, who used to be on a show called Petticoat Junction, voiced Betty. Mel Blanc, who used to do Bugs, Daffy, Tweety, also voiced Barney. Anyway, so I was aware of all those people. Plus, I'm pretty old, so my parents were fans of radio because they were both born in the 20s. And so they would talk often about well-known voice actors in radio, because radio was, I'm sure you know this, people would gather on the radio and listen to weekly episodic television, only it's just on the radio, right? So I was aware of a lot of these folks. And when I moved to LA, I took advantage of the phrase I put myself in a position to get lucky. And that is something that happens to a lot of people in our business, Mitch. I went to LA ostensibly to do what I knew, acting, singing. I obviously wanted to get into live action, on camera stuff. So I joined a bunch of workshops and classes. Uh, but, uh, and I was doing that, a lot of on camera commercials. In those days, my episodic shows were St. Elsewhere, MacGyver, Hill Street Blues. I think, unfortunately for me, a lot of that stuff is on YouTube. But and then a few movies, half a dozen movies. But because I put myself in a position to get lucky, my agent called probably in the mid '80s and said, "Hey, you ever thought about doing animation?" I said, "Sure," but half a dozen people did all of it because all of it was pretty much relegated to Saturday morning. But my timing and the timing of Maurice LaMarche, Teresh McNeil, Billy West, Frank Welker, all the usual suspects now, was also good because that's when animation started really exploding. The first shows I auditioned for were G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I got a job. And the first thing I noticed, Mitch, is I went in and recognized many actors from episodic television whom I recognized from the 60s and 70s. When I was in grade school, junior high school, like, oh my God, I love that actress. She was on Bob Newhart. I love her. But what I noticed was that all these wonderful on-camera talents were not limited by how tall, short, thin, fat, black, white, whatever they looked like. They were only limited by their imagination. It was literally like play acting with your buddies. Okay, Mitch, you're going to be the monster. I'm going to be the monster hunter. My sister's going to be the princess, or she's going to be my assistant, and we're going to get capes and get towels. I mean, literally was that. And I thought, oh my God, this is the coolest. And of course, being an unknown, average-looking Caucasian kid from Michigan, you walk into a room to read for a piece on Fall Guy or Bionic Man, and you look like everybody else who's in the casting office. Because it's, you're there for a guest starring role, but you're not the star of the show. So they bring in 30, 40, 50 actors to read. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But you're all kind of the same type because that's what the casting breakdown is asking for.
Right.
They've already cast Mitchell as the little brother, only they want to get a guy who's a couple of years older as the big brother. Okay. So this kind of stuff is part of getting in the door before you show them you have any talent, but not with animation. So after probably a couple of years of doing cartoons, I called my agent and said, you know what? Don't even bother with the on-camera stuff anymore. If there's a friend of mine and he calls me and says, Rob, I just got a deal. I'm going to do a pilot for NBC and I want you to read for it. That's different. Or I'm doing a low-budget movie and I want, that's different. But I like working. So, man, I was doing Johnny Quest in the morning and Smurfs in the afternoon and then The Mask in the morning and Animaniacs in the afternoon. And I'm glad I went down that road, Mitch, because now I'm old enough to be your grandfather and they still don't care what I look like.
Right.
It is really cool. So that's how that happened. I never in a million years thought that my journey to LA would end up with this. But like I said before we started recording, I could give you a dozen people whom I know well, who've been out here as long as I, who are now producers, writers, directors, writer-directors, writer-actors, or people who came out here to be writers, got involved in a film at AFI, the American Film Institute, and said, oh my God, I love acting. And now they're actors. So that's why this business is so cool. You're in school now, which is great. because you have the time to dip your toes into all this stuff, and you can connect and collaborate with other talented folks around the world. When you get off this Zoom call with me, if you've got a buddy who writes in Iceland, that's it. You meet a
Right.
person who's a composer in South Africa, but his writing partner is in Tokyo. It's crazy. So I love getting a chance to talk to young people in the entertainment, movie, TV business, because you have access to so many people, not only with whom to collaborate, but to learn from, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
like this, if I had this opportunity when I was your age, I probably wouldn't have gone to LA quite so soon. But there wasn't a choice. You know, you go to LA or New York, and I love cars and I love the beach, so I went to LA.
Automatically. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how that got started. And here I am.
All right, perfect. I would love to get into like more specifically about a few major roles of yours, specifically
Sure.
first Animaniacs, which is probably widely regarded as some of the most well-known work of your career because I mean the impact of that
Oh,
lasting is unbelievably long.
thank
I
you.
would love to hear like a two-parter of what do you think is the most memorable part for you of voicing these characters in the show? And two, when you first heard about the modern day revival on Hulu, what did you want to make sure you included within the new reincarnation of that character and those voices to make sure it was like relevant and memorable within today's pop culture standards?
You know what? You ought to go to college for this. You're pretty smart. Well done. Um, Really, seriously, I do this a lot. Excellent questions because
Thank you.
you clearly have studied before school. You clearly have done a deep dive or two into interviewing. It is not just, hey, what was it like to do this? Well, it was great. I mean, I'm in the happy business. But you asked very specific, pithy questions. Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, firstly, let me back up a little bit. Once I committed fully to just jumping into the Hollywood pool, animation cartoon pool, uh, I was more focused, more disciplined. I learned clearly right away that acting is acting, Mitch. It doesn't matter if it's with your face or your voice or both. Acting is acting. The reason you love Yakko or Bart or SpongeBob or Bugs is because they were well written and well performed. That's it. Um, and I remember I was working on an animated version of Fraggle Rock, uh, which was not as good as the Muppet version because it's pretty tough to beat
The
Muppets.
Muppets. Yeah.
Genius. But nonetheless, it was a cool gig. It was on NBC Saturday morning. And during it, I remember this because Townsend Coleman and Townsend played the voice of the Tick and also Michelangelo in Ninja Turtles in the original one, in which I was Raphael. So we were at work one day and the director brought this comic book in and said, hey, I'm casting for this thing called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I really would love to have you boys come read on it. I said, sure. I had heard of the comic book only because I have a lot of friends who are comic book geeks. So I said, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to work. So ultimately, we got the job. I got Raphael, he got Mikey. But then what often happens, Mitchell, is when you get on a show that becomes a bona fide hit, and Turtles to this day is unstoppable. I can I can argue that there are places in the world, Mitch, that I could go tomorrow and say, you know, I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt. In fact, my name is Robert Paulsen, and I love Fight Club. Love David Fincher. Great movie. Eddie Norton. What a great movie. You like Brad Pitt? Brad Pitt. Yeah, I think I've seen him. Well, I'll tell you what, how about this? Los Tortugas Ninjas? Oh, sí, Cowabunga. It's amazing. Okay. But once that happens, you kind of move up a level in the pecking order. Not that you become a movie star and not that people start giving you work, but they include you in more auditions because they say, oh, wow, this guy Rob is Raphael and my kids. Hang on a second. Yes. Yeah, I'm on the road again, which is great because people are interested in having me come visit them. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no
So,
worries.
you know what I think honestly happened, you guys, because you're going to broadcast this. As I told Mitch before he was nice enough to record this, I was auditioning for something. And in it, I kind of go all up, and that's a comedy piece, and I kind of been tweaked and screaming and yelling. So I'm sure there are people going, I don't know who the asshole is in 136, but the guy might be a little bit twisted because he's
Right.
screaming. Anyway, uh, okay, so I started to get more opportunity because people know you more. You know, I want this guy to come and read because my kids love Ninja Turtles and my son loves Raphael, and the guy who does Raphael is Rob Paulsen. Never heard of him, but I like what he does, so I want to bring him in on my project. Okay, so that started happening more and more, and then I started doing a lot of work for Disney. I did Gummy Bears, Darkwing Duck, um, oh my goodness, Chip and Dale, Goof Troop, and Goofy Movie, all that stuff. Then what often happens is a woman with whom I worked at Disney a lot went to Warner Brothers, and she started working on Tiny Toon Adventures. Steven Spielberg, Tom Ruegger, and that was at the beginning of the 90s, which was like a 10-year golden decade, especially at Warner Brothers. Batman, Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid, Superman. Oh my God, just over and with hysteria. So the start of that was Tiny Toons. Steven Spielberg produced the Warner Brothers classic characters as kids, okay? And the creator was a guy named Tom Ruegger. I knew Tom from when he worked at Hanna-Barbera and Disney. So, hey, Rob, I want you to work on Tiny Toons. Great. Now I'm working at Warner Brothers. Then, because that show became popular, I'm on the inside. Hey, Rob, in about a month, we're going to start casting a new show, clean sheet of paper, called Animaniacs. Steven's going to produce that, but it's going to be brand new. And they had me sing on Tiny Toons a lot. And Animaniacs, as you know, is a very music-heavy show.
Right.
But you see what happens as a result of getting lucky by being in the right place. You create your own luck by making conscious choices, even though you don't know what the luck will be or when it will occur. So all of a sudden, the fact that I was a singer first, an actor, started doing cartoons, I can sing in character, all of a sudden, boom, you're in to audition for this brand new clean sheet of paper show that'll be called Animaniacs. So I auditioned, but because it was a brand new show, they auditioned hundreds of people here and in New
Right.
York. But I was already on the inside because I knew these people. Long story short, I got the job. I got Yakko, and then there were secondary characters, of which Pinky and the Brain were. Got Pinky. And then when you're in the studio recording, look, we've got this weird studio psychiatrist named Dr. Scratch and Sniff. Rob, have you got something? Sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan of Peter Sellers. Dr. Strangelove is my favorite movie. So I'm going to do that, you know, that character where Peter goes, mind feel it, you know, all of that. And it worked. So now I'm on Animaniacs. And man, when we started recording that show, it was palpable how good it was. It's like they had all learned their chops on Animaniacs, and then Steven just let it go. And from the beginning, Steven's words to us were, we're not making a kids show, we're making a show for kids of all ages.
Right.
The kids will dig it when Yakko, Wacko, and Dot drop an anvil on Barney, or we called him Baloney. And mom and dad will both kind of go, oh, and laugh when we say fingerprints. And the kids won't get it, but when they're your age, they'll get it. And it will make it relevant. And man, that's how you learn why he's the king of Hollywood. So all of that was an enormous boon to my career. And I was ready for it. If I had auditioned for that 5 years earlier, I would have been as competent. It is the only show in my lifetime in which I've walked up to the producers, whom, as I mentioned, I knew, and I said, you know what, Tom, if you don't hire me for this, you're making a mistake. And it was not out of arrogance. It was out of a deep conviction and confidence that I was ready to rock and roll.
Right.
And I was right. I knew the writing was spectacular. I knew it was going to be a full orchestra. It never happens unless you're with Steven. And the other actors, world class, all this stuff. So I said, I have got to get this job. And even if I don't get Yakko, I got to be good enough so that they'll bring me in so I can be part of it. So I got the lead guy. And I'm saying this because if Ninja Turtles changed the course of my auditioning and my career, Animaniacs changed my life because it was right in my wheelhouse. Sing, improvise, be a smartass, and it worked. Cut to years later, 25 years later,
Wow.
when Randy Rogan, oh, by the way, a little bit back inside baseball. Check this out. The smartest thing I did when I moved to LA, Mitch, is I surrounded myself with people who scared the shit out of me. People who were so talented that, I mean, my mouth would go dry and I'd go, you know, Jesus, that guy's like a year younger than I. He's all over this, man. I can't do that. And the guy who really helped me figure that out, that everybody starts that way, was a wonderful actor who's now sadly gone. His name is Phil Hartman, and Phil used to be on Saturday Night Live. Brilliant talent. He co-wrote Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and he was in the Groundlings with Paul Rubens. Pee-wee, another great friend, great guy. But it was smart because you meet people like Mitchell, whom I've never met, and I out there, and all of a sudden I see his work, and I go, God damn, this kid is really sharp. I want to learn from him. So I did that. And in doing so, this is a great example of you never know the level of talent you'll meet. And just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean they're fixing to go boom. The gentleman who wrote United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru was already writing on Batman, the animated series, writing drama. His first year on the show, he won an Emmy. Then, because his background was musical comedy, he's just a good writer, but his background was musical comedy, writing stuff. He hears about Animaniacs, knocks on the door, literally across the hall. Hey, I want to do both. I can write this, or I can also write comedy, drama. Don't worry about it. Steven's got people. We're good. We're covered. It took him five attempts over maybe 2 months.
Wow.
Look, come on, man. I know, but all I want is a chance. Okay. So even though he's already working, he's got an Emmy, but he doesn't give up. So finally, out of frustration, Tom, the producer, said, all right, I'll tell you what, you go home, Randy, and you write a song this weekend. We're going to give you the Bible of Animaniacs. So have a look at that. Write a song for Yakko in the context of Animaniacs. Okay. He wrote that song in a weekend as his audition piece. So I love telling that story because he did just like I did, like a million kids did. I'm going to go to LA. And then all of a sudden you find out that somebody steps in to an opportunity that is utterly tailor-made. It's their pitch. It's the high heat right over the plate. And all they got to do is connect. So that was the first song I recorded, and it was the first song recorded for Animaniacs. So talk about a high bar. Oh my God. We did 100 episodes. That was the first song. Anyway, years later, Randy and I are doing Animaniacs in concert. And I get a call from Sam Register, who's still the president of Warner Brothers Animation, says, "Hey, Robbie, man, congratulations on Animaniacs in Concert. That show's been out of production for 20 something years, but you guys are, people obviously love it. Great. We're doing it with orchestras and music, blah, blah, blah." He says, "By the way, Steven wants to do it again. And are you in?" What a stupid, am I in? Of course. And the reason is because he got word of us doing it around the country. And he says, "Wait a minute, they sound great." And now the people who grew up watching it have kids, and I'll bet you money they show their kids and they do. So we're going to do it again. Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs. However, because Steven is the biggest nerd of them all, he did not jump on the bandwagon about putting celebrity voice talent in a cartoon just for the sake of, okay, because he said in this case, it's like redoing Bugs. These characters are popular and powerful, and it is not about Liam Neeson being the brain. It is about the authenticity of the character. So Tress MacNeille, Dot, Maurice LaMarche, the brain, Jess Harnell, Wacko, yours truly, Yakko and Pinky, were in. So when they sold it to Hulu, we did it. And the second part of your question is, what did I do to essentially keep the authenticity of Yakko in a real-time, 30 years later context? I did nothing. I changed nothing. The scripts were changed. Even the opening theme song, the title song, was changed in a brilliant way. Because if you watch it with the Hulu reboot, the first half is the original animation and the original song with us singing it. You know, we're zany to the max, there's baloney in our slacks. We're Animaniacs, come join the Warner Brothers, right? Okay. But then the second verse goes things like gender balanced, pronoun neutral, and ethnically diverse. The trolls all say we're so passe, but we did meta first. Genius. So right off the bat, the audience knows that Yakko, Wacko, and Dot and the show are self-aware. We know it's 30 years later. The first episode is a female head of Warner Brothers kind of giving us chapter and verse about what you can't do anymore. You can't say, "Hello, nurse." Although when I do it, people like it.
Yeah.
But the times have changed. The sensibilities have changed. Yakko and Wacko and Dot have to learn that. So we don't even know about laptops. We don't know about iPads. So in the first episode, the woman who was the head of Warner Brothers Studios holds up like an iPad and says, "In this tablet is all of human knowledge up to this point." And Yakko says, "Wow, all of human knowledge in one easy to swallow tablet? I'm in." And swallows it and go, and then he starts saying things like, Xbox, Queen Bey, things that we don't know. And I didn't even know who Queen Bey was. I knew Beyonce, but I didn't know she was referred to as Queen Bey, right? But you see my point. All I had to do was my job. And man, talk about riding a bike. I got to tell you one quick little beautiful anecdote. There was an episode of Animaniacs, the first go around, where I was sitting next to Tress MacNeille, who's Dot. And there were like everybody who's anybody in Hollywood was there. Voice, I mean, it was fantastic. We had Tom Kenny, who's SpongeBob. We had Frank Welker, who's Megatron, and Peter Cullen, who's everybody. Nancy Cartwright, who's Bart. They were all in Animaniacs. Bernadette Peters. Oh my God. And I remember saying to Tress, "Oh my, sweetie, take a picture of this, because man, it just does not get any better." And we were right in the middle of our stride. The show was killing it, winning Emmys and Peabodys. Cut to the first episode of the reboot of Animaniacs 25, 26 years later. I said to Tress, we're just grinning from ear to ear. We're getting ready to record. I said, honey, do you remember years ago, we were working on Animaniacs, and I said, she stopped me. She said, that it doesn't get any better? And I said, yeah. And she said, it does, doesn't it? Oh my God. What a joy. And I think the best part of it, in addition to get to do it again with all these lovely people and Mr. Spielberg, was to meet all these brilliant new writers who grew up watching it. Some of them were Harvard guys, Yale guys, Cincinnati, whatever, who grew up watching it. And now they want to come to the recording sessions because they want to hear their words coming out of Pinky's mouth. Really, really something to see the extent to which these characters connect, not only with people because they love them, but because they're inspired to be creative as a result of a show like Animaniacs.
Right.
So that is a long-winded way of hopefully answering your very excellent question. But I love embellishing a bit because I know what I'm talking about, and I work every week, if not every day, up till today, since 1979. So I love telling these stories because they ultimately go right back to the creative process, what it is that stimulates us, what it is that inspired Mitchell Davey to go into film production and broadcast television. And it's great for listeners to know from not only people who are their peers, but people who have been around and are old as their grandparents and have 40 years of experience to say, oh yeah, I got a story about that. Oh yeah, I got a story about Bart Simpson. Oh yeah, I got a story about the Tasmanian Devil. Jim Cummings is a good friend. I got a story. So it's pretty neat to be in this position, and I'm already rambling. So next question.
I think that's all the questions I have for now. And also thank you just so much for your time in general. It was such an honor talking to you. I grew up
Oh,
with your voice like
Mitchell,
countless times.
honestly, my friend, it is, uh, I have no trouble talking. This is where I get tongue-tied. Any actor, well, take that back. Any person in showbiz, you're in showbiz. No one shoves a gun in your mouth to be in showbiz. Often, people like you and I make that choice despite the concerns of people who love us, right? We say, I know, Mom and Dad, I get it. Or Kathy, I know you love me, but I got to go to LA. I hope you want to come. I get it if you don't. Your path might take you somewhere. It's heartbreaking. But the pull of this business is just like any other, man. Once the hook is set, you got to at least try. So you get that. And that is part and parcel of what is so wonderful about someone like you taking the time not only to chat with me, but to tell me how much you like my work. Because everybody has a period in their life more than once where they think, man, I hope someday that I can affect anyone to the extent that makes them want to say, Rob, my parents had a very acrimonious divorce, and it was really miserable when I was a kid. But Animaniacs, ... And you're going to have that experience one day, Mitch. Somebody's going to meet you, and say, Mr. Davey, I've been a big fan for years, and I listened to your podcast when you were in college, and it's inspired me. And now I produce my own show. I do my thing. I can't tell you what your inspiration meant to me. So you're going to experience that. And that is precisely what happens to me when you're so kind to tell me that. It's cool. It's like having a superpower. All I have to do is say, Narf, and you just look what happens.
Yeah.
You can't help it. So thank you, my friend. It's an absolute privilege to be on your show. I appreciate you taking the time.